This is ContactTalkRadio.com, consciousness in action, and you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ping.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
Welcome to Sex is Medicine, your number one resource for holistic sex education. I'm Devi Ward-Erickson, and I invite you to join me every week for another enriching and powerful conversation about the intersection of sexuality, spirituality, pleasure, and personal growth. Each episode of Sex is Medicine is dedicated to awakening your heart and mind to the true purpose and power of human sexuality. Please join me on this journey of self-discovery as we explore the art of using pleasure as medicine to awaken, heal, and empower every area of your life. Sex is Medicine broadcasts every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific on Contact Talk Radio Network. You can listen to the replay and subscribe to Sex is Medicine on Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. And now get ready for another episode of Sex is Medicine. Hey everybody, welcome to Sex is Medicine. I am your host, Miss Devi Ward-Erickson, and I am so excited to have you here with us yet again for another enriching and wonderful episode where we explore the intersection between sexuality, spirituality, pleasure, and personal growth. Very excited to once again announce that we are the Sex is Medicine is the 2021 ASECT Award winner for live web series. So really excited to have our work and this show honored, period, for what we've been doing for the last 8 years. So yay, thank you to everyone on the panel who nominated and voted for the show. And thank you to all of my wonderful listeners for tuning in every Thursday at 7 p.m. for another episode. And my guest this evening is a Sex is Medicine alumni. So way back in the day when I was first getting started in 2013, 2014, we had the wonderful Steve Bodansky on the show talking about extended massive orgasm. And he is back again in 2021 to talk to us about why orgasm matters. Aside from, pleasure and joy and awesomeness, but he's gonna fill us in on why orgasm matters. But Steve, you're kind of a legend in the field of sexuality education. You and your wife Vera, could you share a little bit about your history in this field and where you started and what your whole life experience has been like teaching?
Well, I guess I was a bio major in college, and then I went to med school in Europe for a couple of years, and I came back and I went back to school some more. And before I went to grad school, I stumbled onto Morehouse, which is a school that teaches about sexuality. And so I went back to school then, and I got my master's in genetics, molecular genetics, and I really wasn't that interested in it. I like reading about it, and I like hearing about it, but doing the actual experiments wasn't a whole lot of fun. And then I wound up in California. I wasn't going to even be with Morehouse, but I was invited to a group there, and then all of a sudden I was living there. So it's kind of like fate.
An organic evolution.
And and then I met Vic there, and then I met Vera about it, maybe within the first year I was there. And she was getting certified to show a 1-hour orgasm demonstration of like an extended massive orgasm. That's what we call them, but they just call them 1-hour orgasms, intense orgasms. So she was getting off, like, she was married to another gentleman, and but she had to get off she was taking a course there where she had to get off first it was once a day, then it was 3 times a day, and it wound up in the 3rd or 4th week they had to get off 100 times in a week. They're supposed to get off 100 times in a week.
By get off, you mean orgasm?
So she had to get done. She had to get rubbed on a lot. This is mostly manual stimulation. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and was it for an hour every time? 100 hours
No,
of orgasm? No.
Just be like 10, 15
10,
minutes.
15,
Just
okay.
as long as it was like verified orgasm. I think you need a witness too. So you had to have an extra person there. So like, I was like, she found, we did med, and her husband couldn't do all the work.
His fingers got tired, eh?
So she used me a lot, and we became like kind of research buddies like that.
Mm-hmm.
She got certified right after taking that course, and then her husband died, and we moved in together a couple of years later.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been married almost 40 years now.
Wow! Congratulations.
And I got certified a few years later, in the 1980s, and then we were teachers at Morehouse. There's Moore University until 1992, and then they're still teaching courses there. And then Vera wanted to leave, and she thought it was too difficult for when you're getting old to live like a hippie. So we started this other group called the Welcome Consensus in 1992, and we trained them on how to give 1 hour orgasms and demonstrations and teach the courses. So that lasted a few years, and then we left them too, and just decided to be on our own. And then I started writing a book just to kind of just to make my teaching better.
Yeah.
And we liked the books. We said, hey, let's see if we can get this published after it was finished. It wasn't like there wasn't the purpose in writing it. And we submitted it, and the first place we submitted to accepted it. So we thought, this is easy,
I know. Look at you. You got really good karma. The first place you submitted to accept it. But I want to circle back to, you wrote the book to help you teach better. That's pretty amazing. So you found that writing the book, was it kind of like helping you outline the curriculum?
Yeah, and to investigate some different things, and expand on some of the course material that we had learned.
Yeah.
So.
And that is actually the first book is that Extended Massive Orgasm? Is that the first book that we did our interview on? And I found that's a really great book. So for those of you listeners who haven't read it yet, Extended Massive Orgasm by Steve Bodansky. And the instructions that you give for the technique are very, very clear, which I don't find often in books that are describing like how to do things. Usually it's kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to do that right. But yeah, your descriptions, it's a really good book. I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass right now. It's a good book. But I can blow smoke up your ass if you want.
Right. So then, but it wasn't that we submitted to them, but they wanted to change things around, with a lot of editing and stuff. But actually, about a year before the book came out, Vera had done this talk in New York. I think we were giving a demonstration for Mama Gina's.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
We're doing like a 1 hour orgasm demonstration there. And meanwhile, she was invited to this group to talk to this group about this high-powered women's group there. They had like some famous women. I don't remember the exact name, but like I think one was Clinton's secretary or something or other. Now, you probably heard of some of these people. And there was one woman there who was a journalist. And she wrote for the New Yorker, and she wanted to write an article about coming for an hour in the New Yorker. And they kept saying, well, maybe next month. And they kept postponing it. So, we didn't really have anything on the line yet anyhow. And actually, our book then comes out, and she submitted the article to another magazine called Talk Magazine, which was there for 2 years. But it was really a great magazine. It was started by the lady who did Cosmopolitan. Oh, yeah. So there was a big article there. And then when that hit the magazine, we're getting all kinds of, our book came out at the same time. Mm-hmm. We're getting all kinds of publicity from around the world. Were calling us. They even were paying us to which they never, these 2 German TV shows were fighting over who would talk to us.
That's awesome. Yay. Good.
So that was karma there again.
Yeah.
So our book was like on the Amazon top 100 list for a few months. It was like really good. For a sex book, it was like a best-selling sex book at the time.
Wow.
So our small little publishers said, well, I want you to write another book. So I said, well, I don't have any books in me. What should I write about? So how about like just write a Q&A book, or a book about man-woman relationships? And they said, no, we want another sex book. Think of something else. So I said, well, how about a lot of illustrations? And we describe a similar thing, but we go into a little more detail about male orgasm and other things. So I said, that sounds good. So we did that. And that was also, the publicity wasn't quite the same, but it was still pretty good. We still getting different magazines calling us and writing about us all over the world. And that book also hit in the top 100 on Amazon. It's called The Illustrated Guide to Extended Massive Orgasm.
Beautiful.
And after that, like, sales of books wasn't that easy.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. The company actually sold the business. We did two more books for them. One was a man-woman book called To Bed and Not to Bed. Another one was called Instant Orgasm, which was about having an orgasm like on the first stroke.
Wow.
And how to train to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just as good as the first two books, I believe. But without publicity, they weren't, they sold okay, but not, nothing to brag about.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wanted to do like a memoir, but they didn't do memoirs. So I wrote that. And then I wrote a poetry book. They didn't do poetry books. I wrote a novel called Extended Massive Orgasm, the novel, which is like my favorite book. But they didn't do novels. And then they sold their company to some big conglomerate in Tennessee. And they weren't really interested in anything that we were doing anyhow. So I kept writing, but it wasn't really I haven't been. Our first two books still sell the most, probably, for the books, and I started self-publishing.
So let's talk about Orgasm Matters, because just that title is intriguing. So why does orgasm matter?
Well, it had like a double entendre, because like Orgasm Matters is like different. So it's about different topics in orgasm, and I it matters to me because that's my life.
It matters to a lot of people, because if they're not having them, they're miserable. Or either you're not having enough, or maybe you're having too much, or they're not good enough, or
the human race wouldn't be able to continue it. Men didn't have orgasms, probably women too, but definitely if men didn't have orgasms, we would be fading out a lot quicker.
Yes, indeed. And it's a good form of population control, semen retention, orgasming without ejaculating.
And it's good for your health. It's good for your well-being. It's good for your happiness. It's good for your relationships. It matters. So the chapters are, a lot of the stuff that I wrote in the first couple of books, but a little more detailed, a little more, it's like 15, 20 years later. So I've been teaching since that time. So I added all the stuff that I've been learning, more about communicating and how to communicate in the bedroom.
Okay, so some of those nuances of communication, because that's a huge point for so many couples. It's like you can have, hand techniques or tongue techniques or whatever, but if you're not communicating and getting feedback about what's working and what could work better, that's a source of contention for many couples. So do you have some tips around communication that you can share? Just a couple tips for our audience, like in all your work, like because you've been doing this for years and decades. What are some of the top things about communicating that you've noticed?
Well, I mean, there's a few things come to my mind when you ask me that question. Like, the first thing is, approval, approving of what's ever happening, and and then I mean, there's a trading technique where which you put in our first book, where you approve of something, approve what they're doing, and then you kind of guide them to how you want it done. But you have to keep approving along the way till you get it exactly the way you want.
So approving, you mean affirming and saying like, that's
nice,
or that feels
good.
You
got great hands. That feels great. I mean, our work is basically about manual stimulation, but because when you're using oral, it's hard to talk anyhow. One person can talk,
So the approval. So then I would think of that as affirmation. So the continuous, like, yes, that's good. So yeses, approval, and then anything else.
Yeah. Well, what I thought about was like sometimes, like I'd ask Vera, would you like to get off? Would you like to have an orgasm? Would you like to get done? And she kind of, less than 50-50 would be yes, probably. It wasn't like an enthusiastic response that I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
But if I kissed her or just told her, okay, now take your pants off, and gave her a direct instruction like that works every time.
Okay. All right. So just saying, hey, would you like to do this thing? It's like, yeah, whatever. But if you're like getting passionate with her and saying, take those panties off, then she's like, all right, I'll take those panties off then.
Right.
Okay, it's good. So giving directions as opposed to just asking questions. That's good.
Everybody's different. Some people don't like to be, you got to be a little more political, but some people really respond that way. So I think you have to know who your audience is or who your relationship is with and what they respond to. And she responded a lot better to that.
Yeah. Well, so that's learning your partner. And that's a beautiful thing. When you've been together, that's the beauty of long-term relationships is we really get to learn what our partners respond to and what is a turn on and what is a turn off for them.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. So communication, that's in your Orgasm Matters, digging a little bit more deeply into that. What else is in Orgasm Matters?
Well, there's a bunch about self-pleasuring too.
Ooh, let's talk about self-pleasuring.
Okay.
Round of applause for self-pleasure. Yes, this is an important thing.
I think everybody should self-pleasure, even if you're in a relationship.
Amen. Yes.
And really learn your body and become like, a great lover of yourself. Yeah. Because a lot of people say, it's not that much fun, I'm like doing it, they would have excuses, but I think it's something you can learn how to be really good at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like anything else. And it's the best way to get you, to like yourself more. And if you do train your body, you'll be more fun with your partner too.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, a lot of women always say they want guys to learn how to pleasure yourself, and then it'll be you'll be more attractive to people, or for guys, be more attractive to women too, if they're getting off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
on bodies is like what sex appeal is,
Exactly. Yes, and so those are great reasons to self-pleasure, is knowing our own bodies and and becoming more attractive and all that. What are your thoughts around, like, I know that many of us, particularly our generation and older, were shamed when we were children for touching our genitals, and that imprint of shame really stays with us as adults. So for people who have resistance to self-pleasuring, maybe because of childhood trauma or religious conditioning, do you have any guidance for how they can approach this in a compassionate and loving way?
And get over it.
Get over it. He said, just who cares about your trauma? Just get rid of it. Was that easy?
You can spend the rest of your life, seeing it shrink, or you can just decide, maybe I'll read this Orgasm Matters book and follow some of these.
Oh, okay. So you got the tips in the book for how to get around that little block.
Yeah.
So read about it. So I like that tip.
You
So
have to buy the book.
yeah, so that's good though, because that actually is a good suggestion. Is that when I what I've observed in my own work and in my own self and in the world, it's like when we know that there's a block somewhere, right? We have resistance to something. Learning about it, like reading it, like kind of instead of trying to just plow through it, like kind of going at it from different angles. So it's like, okay, so I have a big block to self pleasure because of, my childhood trauma or whatever. And I'm curious about how I can incorporate this into my life. So reading about it, learning, getting some guidance and getting some suggestions around how we can approach this, it seems like a great place to start.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, if you can't really blame your childhood for, I think once you're like past 40 years old, maybe when you're 25, you can still blame
Really, do you know how trauma works in the nervous system though? Because this is an area of speciality and for me, and trauma locks into your autonomic nervous system. You can't think yourself out of trauma. So if I was raped at the age of 3, that's still going to be in my nervous system at the age of 46, unless I've used somatic practices to help release it from my autonomic nervous system. So trauma is not a psychological issue. It's a physiological issue that has psychological repercussions. So it's actually a bodily response to a threat that hasn't been rectified in the soma, in the physical body. So it's, like blaming our childhood is one thing, but accurately assessing, like trauma is a real thing.
Right.
Like I said, it's a physiological experience with psychological repercussions.
Then you should see a therapist, I guess, and, get some help.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And get support. Absolutely. Yeah. And somatic support is what we really focus on, because again, talk therapy is great for kind of intellectualizing and understanding. And I think it's wonderful to understand for trauma survivors that it's not our fault. Like we didn't ask for this to happen to us, but to actually completely resolve it so that our nervous systems are no longer locked into a trauma response. We need somatic methods. So there's a variety of those available to us now, but it's somatic healing and somatic therapy is really the way to go if we want to completely resolve our traumatic experiences.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. Yay. Awesome. So tell me more about Orgasm Matters. What else can we find in this book? It sounds like a wonderful guidebook for exploring and expanding our understanding of pleasure and the importance of orgasm in our life.
Yeah, well, it's more about, doing a woman, also doing a man, but and some of the specific techniques and different strokes you can use. Like I've created a whole bunch of different strokes, how to rub on the clitoris and how to tease the clitoris, or so there's pretty much a lot of detail onto how to get a person to feel more when you're giving the orgasm.
Wow, that is amazing. So like super detailed strokes on and techniques on how to pleasure the clitoris in different ways, and it sounds like to get different responses.
Yeah, and how to use lubricate somebody, in a number of different ways, and how to approach the clitoris, not just go direct, they call it dives.
Yeah.
Diving in.
Diving in. Yeah. Don't just dive in.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. That sounds amazing. And and very valuable information for people that don't feel that, for partners that don't necessarily know much about the clitoral glands, or don't know, feel kind of insecure about their ability to identify it, stroke it, pleasure it. It sounds like a really great instruction manual of a variety of different techniques.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also there's a section about different resistances that people have, and how to overcome those.
Mm-hmm. What are some resistances that people have in terms of resistances to receiving pleasure?
Yeah, why I'm not that kind of a woman, or, you know, I don't know you that well yet, you know, or, you know, what else is there? Just it's a bunch, and I got to reread the book now myself.
So let's pick up on what you were saying. So are you, is it like presented as, so I don't know you that well. Now that sounds like something like on a first date or a second date or something, but what about for people that are partnered and wanting to use these methods?
Well, you know, you still have to, when you seduce somebody, you still have to put your attention on somebody and to see if they're coming towards you or they're going away from you. So if somebody's coming towards you, then you can, like, you know, come more aggressive and a little more positive. And somebody's going away from you, you have to kind of like push them away a little bit, a little bit further and faster than they will actually were going. So they go, whoa, you know.
So it sounds like there's a little bit of like relational dynamics included in the book as well.
Well, like I told you with Vera, like, you know, when I told her to take your pants off now, that worked. If I just asked her, you know, like good buddy, hey, you know what, how about this, you know, that didn't seem to work. So you have to see where your partner is at again. And if it's it has to be fun to do. You have to, when you overcoming somebody's resistance, you have to enjoy doing it. Like if it's too hard work, then forget the whole thing.
I'm curious about this overcoming resistance. So what is it that the person's actually resisting? What are you perceiving that they're actually resisting?
Well, suppose they don't even know what you say. Would you like to have a due date? You know, we'd like to get, you know, and they don't know what the hell a due date is. You know, it could be somebody new, you know. So you have to explain what it is, you know, and tell me, well, you know, you don't have to do anything. All you do is lie there, and I'll, you know, I'll take control of your body, and won't go do anything you don't want me to do. And a lot of women will resist that too. They don't like that idea. So you got to.
So why do you think
you got to talk first and find out what the exact resistance is?
Exactly. That's so. What do they say? What do they? So what we learn in nonviolent communication, which I love, is that every no is a yes to something else. So that's what I think of like overcoming resistance is really triggering for me to hear, because it sounds like trying to press someone on their boundaries. And so for me, it's like, I love to think of it as enrolling somebody in your vision of what you want to create together, right? So with this stroking or this pleasuring, it's like, hey, I want to give you lots and lots of pleasure. I want you to just lay there and I want to give you pleasure. So if someone says no to that, what else? What are they saying yes to instead?
Well, that's right. Like I had this friend, and he invited this woman, or she wanted to come down, I think, have like an affair with him, and she came down, and then he wanted to do her, and she just didn't want to get done.
Yeah.
So instead of like exploring different things, he kind of like decided he wasn't going to do anything with her. So he could have like played around and find out what she wanted. I could have asked some questions, and
right. That's kind of like mutual respect.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Well, yeah. So, and somebody may not, you know, may think, well, you know a lot, but I don't know anything, you know. So I'm afraid, you know. So you just have to safe port and make them feel good about what your intentions are.
Yeah. Well, so safety and trust are necessary in order to have an amazing sexual experience, right? If we don't feel safe, if our nervous systems don't feel safe, then we can't actually relax fully enough for the sexual function to happen, for engorgement to happen. So question for you in terms of this technique that you share with people is for people with vulvas and vaginas, is the focus on the external clitoris, or do you do any internal work as well?
Well, most of it is on the head of the clitoris. That's where the most nerve endings are, but like in the 1 hour orgasm, we have the first half hour is just the head of the clitoris. And the second half hour, there's an insertion and the different spots inside the vagina that are where the internal clitoris is, like the G spot is real part of the clitoris, the clitoral roots.
So question, why do you wait? I probably know the answer to this, but I just want to ask you. So you wait a half an hour before doing internal work. And why is that?
Well, that's what we learned to do it, but just so you don't need to have anything else to have a great orgasm. You have the woman's really in total extended, intense orgasm for that first half hour. So, and then you're adding this on, but you don't have to add it on because some people don't want any insertion.
So we understand. So like, in terms of the internal erectile tissue you were talking about, so the internal clitoris and the G-spas, the urethral sponge. And so it can take 20 to 45 minutes before that internal erectile tissue is fully engorged, right? So it would make sense that you're pleasuring the glands of the clitoris for a full 30 minutes to let the internal erectile tissue blossom.
Well, I think, women who train their internal part of their whole vulva is really, you could touch them inside it a lot earlier than 30 minutes.
Agreed. And we're talking about, it's not that you have to wait for 30 minutes before you touch internally, it's for it to be fully erect. And so obviously internal stimulation can happen before a full erection, and the sensation is just going to be a lot different. The closer we are to full erection, the more sensation there is. And then of course, you're absolutely right. When a yoni owner is, as you call, fully trained or fully activated, like a fully activated vagina takes a lot less for that a lot less time for that engorgement to or the tumescence to be fully realized,
to blossom.
Right on. Okay, so the 30 minutes on the outside, then some internal work for the other 30 minutes. And is that part of what you talk about in your book?
I think there's a separate chapter on the internal part. But there's a whole lot of information before you get to that even.
So where do you start with the book? Where does it start? And then it sounds like it takes you kind of through a journey, like step by step from, just getting started to the grand finale.
Well, it was kind of like a series of essays and, different things different Orgasm Matters ideas. And, so it started, I guess, in the general, and then we get more, we get down to specific techniques, the communication techniques and the rubbing techniques and the self-pleasuring techniques comes a little earlier. And then the second hand, what do you do with the second hand? And then how to pleasure a man and how to use it one hand or two hands. And there's not a whole lot about intercourse in there though, because I'm not an intercourse expert.
I love that. You're not an intercourse expert, eh? But I do love that in your book, Orgasm Matters, that that you do discuss pleasuring for lingams, for men, for people with penises. So are there any thoughts or ideas or tips you can give us in terms of pleasuring penises? Like, is it similar when are the strokes? I mean, obviously you're using, with a clitoris, you're using a fingertip, but with a lingam, you're probably using more surface area of your hand. So what is the difference aside from that?
Well, I think a lot of guys like it hard and fast. And if they can learn how to do it slow and gentle, they'll feel a lot more.
Wow, that's huge. And why do you think, let's see, so when you're talking about the penises, are you thinking usually of the circumcised penis, or do you have techniques and strokes for intact penises?
Mostly circumcised penises, because that's what I own.
Yes, that's your specialty.
I'm not an expert in uncircumcised, but it's a similar. It's still the strokes are still similar. So, and also the techniques of what to say to a guy. Also find out what he enjoys. What kind of, some guys like you'd be assertive. Some guys may like you'd be more ladylike. So you have to, again, put your attention on the person and see where they're at, what turns them on.
Yeah. So that's hugely important, is that connection and what's happening for that person, and ensuring that you and that person feel good together about what you're doing. That's like, if you don't feel good together about what you're doing, nothing good's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah. So one thing that I loved about the book Extended Massive Orgasm is that you describe that different types of stroke and different types of touch have different effects in the nervous system. So for example, a short, fast stroke builds arousal in the body, whereas a long, slow stroke kind of plateaus it, or, whatever, brings less of a charge. Could you talk a little bit about how the different strokes create different experiences in our body?
Well, I think the intention is more important than the actual stroke itself.
Okay, tell me about that.
So let's say you're doing a guy again, you can give him the long stroke, and the more you feel in your hand, the more you're enjoying this stroke, the more sensation he'll feel too.
Oh, yeah.
So you can bring a guy up with a long stroke, and then if you want to go a few quicker strokes, you can pick somebody that way. The way you pick somebody is by changing the stroke. So, but generally with penises, the long, slow stroke is where you feel the most.
And so I love what you just said there, is that, and I remember this from your book as well, you talked about the taking touch. So the more pleasure we as the giver can feel in our hand or finger or whatever body part we're using when we're stroking our partner, the more pleasure they feel in their body. Is that accurate?
Definitely. That's the only thing you can go by. You can't, it's not like giving somebody a massage, trying to, get something, get their muscles this way. You want to enjoy. It's about the pleasure you take. The more pleasure you have giving it, the more pleasure they will feel.
So that's a huge reframe for many people, because particularly around sexuality, because when we think about giving to another person sexually, the focus is usually on making them feel good. There's usually not, I'm not usually thinking about, well, how I feel. I'm like, okay, does this feel good to them? So that's a huge reframe for all of us, I think, to really to presence our own pleasure while we're giving pleasure. It's like an energetic transmission of pleasure.
Yeah, I think that, then they won't owe you anything either after you finish doing it, because you're taking your pleasure from doing it. And it's, and the more pleasure you can have, the more they'll feel like they can surrender to that. You want person to surrender to the pleasure, and if you're working at it, the person will notice that.
Yeah,
enjoy it. Now a woman may want a lighter stroke or a firmer stroke, and you can, accommodate whatever they want. Still take the pleasure when you're doing it, though.
Yeah. Again, I'm just going to reiterate.
If it doesn't feel good, you shouldn't do it. It doesn't feel good to you.
Yes, exactly. That is so huge. So if it doesn't feel, I want everyone to listen when it comes to lovemaking and sex, if it doesn't feel good to you to give in this way, then don't do it. Because I get that. Like if you're on, I've been in situations where I'm like kind of uncomfortable or, I'm trying to give this pleasure and like I'm not entirely like in alignment. And the other person can feel that because particularly when we're being sexually intimate, we're sharing, it's an energetic exchange. It's not just a physical exchange. We're exchanging emotions and energy and thoughts and all of that. And so if whatever I'm experiencing is part of what I'm transmitting to that other person.
Yeah. So, if you have like a cramp or something, or your hand or your leg or anywhere, or if you have to pee or something, take a break.
Yes.
Breaks are really good.
That's huge. That's huge because that's the other thing, right? Is like we learn to just fuck through discomfort when it comes to sexual experiences because we're afraid of like taking a break, like you just said. So take a break, especially if you're doing like a 1-hour orgasm, you're going to need a break.
Well, in the ones we did in front of people, we didn't take breaks for that.
That's because you were performing. You don't get breaks when you're on stage.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more fun. The goal is to have pleasure, to have fun, and if it's work, then you're not succeeding.
Yeah, mutual pleasure for both of you. And again, it's a reframe, and it's a different concept because we don't think of, typically we're not conditioned in the society to think of when I'm, particularly if it's like with a finger, that if I'm stroking someone's clitoris, that I can be having as much fun as the person receiving the stroking. Like that's not the way that we're taught about sexuality.
Right.
So I love this piece that it's like it's almost like the polyamorous term compersion, which is when we take pleasure from somebody else's pleasure. That's exactly what's happening. Is we're taking pleasure from somebody else's pleasure. We're taking pleasure from giving somebody else pleasure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exciting. So what else? Where do we end up in your book? So we've got this dynamic, and we've got the strokes and the taking touch and the ensuring that we feel pleasure. I'm guessing like, okay, when it comes to self-pleasure, how important is it for us to take pleasure from our own touch, not just in our genitals, but to feel that pleasure in our own hands as we're stroking ourselves?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I was doing this. We had this thing called connections. Where you connect different parts of your body to your genitals.
Yeah.
So, like, my lips are very connected to my genitals. So when I kiss her, I can feel my genitals, and she's turned on too, so she can feel. And so I said, well, let me try. And what you do is a technique for creating the connections where you rub both areas, at the same time. First one area, then the other area, and you rub them in sync. So let me try that with my hands. Let me get my hands connected to my penis. So I had fun playing with that.
Yeah.
But so what do you put your attention on if you're rubbing yourself? To put on my hands or to put on my penis?
Yeah.
So,
the hand and the penis become one. I love that. So it sounds so that I've done that connection practice because I was at the Welcome Consensus, and so learned that practice, and so that's a really fun practice to do of connecting these different areas of the body that are also connected to the genitals, and even if they aren't actually connected to the genitals, you can make it so, right? You can catalyze that connection by doing this practice. So is that in the book as well?
Yes.
Yay! Awesome.
And more, it was in our first book too, but it's more detailed in this book.
I love that. So Orgasm Matters is kind of like the evolution, it sounds like, of extended massive orgasm. It's your, the last decade or few that you've evolved in your own practice. So yes. It's like the mastery level.
Yes, it takes it to next level. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So where can people get your book? Because it sounds like, as I said, it's a really wonderful textbook in many ways
Well,
for
they're all
technique.
on Amazon.
Okay.
This one was actually, had self-published it a few years ago. And this woman, I wanted to publish for my novel, but she didn't publish novels. She didn't publish, she was actually an agent, but she wasn't an agent for novels. But then she started her own publishing company, and she said, well, do you have any nonfiction books? So I sent her the Orgasm Matters books. I said, well, it's selling on Amazon already. She said, well, let me look at it. And she liked it so much. She said, well, let me just make a few editing changes, because it hadn't been really edited. And she got that done. And then it came out like a couple months ago, a redone issue. Took out a couple of parts of my personal stories. We did this movie that she took out of the book, and I added more to the self-pleasuring section, because I'm writing a book now about self-pleasuring. So I kind of took a lot of the information that I was writing now and put it in this book. So I think it's in some stores too, but I don't know which stores selling it. I think Amazon is the easiest, but the Barnes and Nobles has it too. I'm sure you can get it at Apple.
That's awesome. Yeah. Barnes and Noble says Orgasm Matters. I love it. I love it. That's wonderful. So on Amazon, Orgasm Matters, for a manual, for a technique manual, a sexual pleasure technique manual, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then what if, do you guys have a website going right now if people want to find out more about you or get in touch?
Well, it's the same website, extendedmassiveorgasm.com.
All right.
I also have the domain name orgasmmatters.com. So you can go there and it'll take you to the same place.
Okay, awesome. So orgasmmatters.com or extendedmassiveorgasm.com to learn more about you and Vera. And are you guys still teaching right now?
No, because Vera has Alzheimer's.
Ah, gotcha. So
I do personal private training, and she's not teaching anymore.
Okay. Yeah.
But she's a happy camper.
Yay.
Anyhow.
And probably having lots of orgasms still, I would imagine.
No, she was until about a year ago. Now, just like when I hug her, I think with Alzheimer's, you kind of like go backwards in your mental or your thinking. So she's kind of like a kid now.
Oh,
and she doesn't do that.
Yeah.
And I can't say take your pants off now, and she's all right.
Be like, no, that's abuse.
No, I don't do that yet.
Let's not do that.
But we hug a lot and kiss. I can feel her pussy through my pants. I can feel her getting off that way.
Yay.
So.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So yeah, it's another way to love. It's continue education. And,
all the various ways we can love.
I'm happier than I've ever been, and more loving, I'm a more loving person, and she's just wonderful to be with. So we're having a good time.
I'm glad to hear that, and blessings to both of you.
Sometimes it's a little crazy, but
yeah, I would imagine. Yeah. And you're healing from some of your own health struggles.
Well, yeah, but I'm fine.
You're good. Okay.
I can
well,
do
we're
anything.
Glad to hear that. Okay. Well, I am glad to hear that. It's good to know that you're doing well and maintaining your strength and vitality. So, so wonderful. So people can find Orgasm Matters on Amazon.com, or you can Google Orgasm Matters at orgasmmatters.com and learn more about Steve Bodansky and his wife, Vera, these legends, some of the legends who have graduated from the Moore University of Sexual Pleasuring for Genitals. It's a wonderful thing. And we are out of time this evening. So I want to thank you again, Steve. Are there any last words you want to share with our audience before we sign off?
Yeah. Enjoy your life. It's up to you.
Yeah. Beautiful. Words of wisdom. Enjoy your life. It's our choice. We can choose to enjoy it. Awesome.
All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of Sex is Medicine. Make sure that you subscribe to our wonderful show on YouTube, iTunes, TuneIn, whatever your platform is, Spotify, and make sure that you stay connected with us at Authentic Tantra on all your social media outlets and find out more about Authentic Tantra and sign up for any of our amazing free offerings at authentictantra.com. You can also sign up for your 4 forms of pleasure, a free chapter from my book, Shake Your Soul Song, at deviwardtantra.com. Have a beautiful, beautiful weekend, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. You've been listening to Sex is Medicine with Devi Ward Erickson, your #1 resource for holistic sex education. You can listen to and subscribe to Sex is Medicine on Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. Just search Sex is Medicine with Devi Ward. Stay connected with me and my guests on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Authentic Tantra, and learn how you can use Tantra as medicine to heal, awaken, and empower every area of your life at authentictantra.com. Make sure to tune in to Sex is Medicine every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific on Contact Talk Radio Network, and join our watch party every Thursday evening on Facebook at Authentic Tantra. We look forward to you joining us next week for another episode of Sex is Medicine with Devi Ward.